Welcome back. Tell us more about the trip and how long were you there for and which cities did you visit?
Hi, I'm glad to be back.
I was in Ukraine for about a week, to be exact, about 6 days. But because there are no direct flights, I had to travel to Poland first. And from Poland, we took the car, and that was about 3-4 hours to the border. But from the border, we were asked to get off, take all our luggages out, and we had to walk. And so we had to cross the border on foot because otherwise it would take us about 10 to 15 hours by car. And so with all the luggage that we had to get off the car and we had to cross the border. And similar to what you have here in Singapore with Malaysia, crossing the Johor Bahru point. And so we had to cross over. You have the immigration from the Polish side and the Ukrainian side. And from there, we first went to this city called Lviv, which is closer to the border. And so I got to travel to 2 different cities in Ukraine. But it was a fascinating trip. It was, being there, you're able to see what is actually going on there, though it was very short. It was just 7 days. You actually sort of like know what the Ukrainians are feeling and what they're going through and how they're trying to fight this war. And it's amazing how the people out in the front line, on the front lines, they're fighting this with equipment and with all the artillery, but there are just so many Ukrainians, individuals, and very small groups. They're not, you don't have hundreds of them getting together to give their support or show their support. But it's amazing how resilient those Ukrainians are and how in their own ways are trying to help Ukraine fight this war. And let me first share this clip with you that we did of showing this one Ukrainian man who works for a full-time international company, and yet he finds time to assemble drones. And that's what a lot of Ukrainians are doing. But let me share this clip with you first.
Okay, let's take a look.
Serhiy Stepanchuk comes home from his IT specialist job to assemble drones for the Ukrainian military at night and in his free time. Alone in a storage room, he works tirelessly to wire up the components bought using donations and his savings. He's put together about 15 drones over the past 5 months.
I have a lot of friends who are joining the army. Now they have new need in FPV drones, so I started to assemble them in my home.
Drones play a crucial role on the battlefield in surveillance and in directing and conducting strikes. Just this month, Ukraine announced the creation of a new branch of its armed forces dedicated to the unmanned systems. But volunteers like Serhiy are the ones in the driver's seat when it comes to the manufacturing and testing of small drones.
I've sent them to Social Drone Initiative group of people who are testing them with militaries on the field where it's allowed to fly. And after this, they return drones back to me, and I send them to military friends here.
Here at a testing site, members of the Ukrainian Volunteer Army are putting a do-it-yourself drone through its paces.
Ми сьогодні тестували дрони. Тобто робили тестові польоти, так є дрони, які FPV, які перший раз їх запускаємо, тому що їх тільки зробили, ці дрони, зібрали. І ми тестували їх, чи вони літають, чи все в порядку, на дистанцію, тобто і обльотували дрони.
It may be nimble, but crudely assembled drones can be a hit and miss, especially their video feed. And this can affect Ukraine's ability to attack Russian positions on the front line.
70% це що є влучання. А так буває, що заглушать ребом, тобто і дрон падає. Буває, що там попадаємо, якщо техніка або піхота знаходиться десь в посадці, і тобто, ти попадаєш в дерево, не попадаєш в саму техніку. Буває, що попадаєш в техніку, але вона, тобто, ніяких її не завдали таких ушкоджень, і повторно летимо, і повторно ще раз по ній.
Ukraine wants to open up a new frontier in drone warfare. It is prepared to spend more than $1 billion this year to upgrade its drone capabilities. With traditional artillery in short supply and fewer new recruits.
There's no official data on the number of Ukrainians who have volunteered to fight in this war. But 2 years ago, recruitment centers across Ukraine, like this one in the city of Lviv, were flooded with volunteers who wanted to fight for their country.
The halls of this recruitment center in the western city of Lviv are empty now. But 19-year-old student Andrei Krivonis is here to sign up, specifically to join the Da Vinci Wolves Battalion, a legendary unit in the Ukrainian army.
Не страшно, але трішки страшно, так що це у кожного буде. І відреагувала спершу негативно, зовсім негативно, але сказали, що це твоя доля, тому вирішую сам.
Andrei decided he wants to defend his country against Russia's attack. He will now undergo training before joining the battalion. Any Ukrainian man between the ages of 27 and 60 can be drafted into the military and has to serve until the end of the war. And most men are encouraged to volunteer.
У нас кожен день є нові анкети, які люди заповнюють, як онлайн, так і приходять сюди. Далі кожен день у нас є співбесіди, я не можу називати цифру, але вони є, і люди приходять, досить мотивовані, досить цікаві особистості.
Many too have fallen. 2 years of war have depleted Ukraine's ranks, and heartbreaking scenes like this can be seen every day, with casualties already believed to total hundreds of thousands on both sides. It's unclear how many more will follow as the war grinds on.
And just in that, the last clip, you can see how there are funerals, but they're just not one. Apparently, there are as many as 5 funerals in that small little city in Ukraine. And, you know, everybody in that clip, in that story, were volunteers, whether they were individuals or those people in the army. They're all part of this volunteering service.
Right.
And so, you know, you can see how the drones is changing the war in Ukraine right now. And it's those small little drones that they're making with those hands that are really changing the way that the Ukrainians are fighting in this war.
Right.
And they're damaging the military artillery of the Russians.
Right.
So, you know, they need as many drones as they can, and so they're trying to get as many volunteers too as they fight the Russians in this war.
Which is something I want to ask you about, Yoon. So you talked about recruitment, you talked about conscription briefly as well. We know that Kyiv is thinking about lowering the conscription age as well from 27 to 25, I think. Can you describe what morale is like in the context of what you just mentioned as well? As many as 5, 6 funerals a day in just one city?
Well, the morale is slowly ebbing. I mean, it's because it's been 2 years, and I speak to a lot of the Ukrainians, and especially the mothers and wives who say their husbands and sons went to the war when this war broke out, and they wanted to go and fight, and they all felt that they needed to. But it's been 2 years, and they haven't been able to come back home because they can't be replaced. And so you do get a sense that a lot of the mothers and wives want their sons and husbands back. But speaking to some of the people, the Ukrainian volunteers who have been to the front line, especially that person who was flying the drones and testing them, he's taking those to the front line the next day. He says they're very strong. I mean, they still feel that they need to win this war, and they can only do so by volunteering and by having all those people in there. But you do get a sense that people are not volunteering as they did before, and that's why that recruitment center was quite bare, and there was only one 19-year-old boy. And so what Ukraine wants to do is, and they've started, is they do go around with his papers, checking people's age to see if they can be drafted into the military. And so there are a lot of people who are trying to get away from doing this. And another issue is that when this war broke out, a lot of the young men did flee the country. And so in a country like Poland, you do see a lot of Ukrainian young men who fled, and that's why there's even a dispute even among the Ukrainian community in Poland, because many of the mothers and, you know, wives who see this young men saying, you should be fighting out there, they do have this quarrel among themselves. And so I think this is a big issue. It is something that the Ukrainian government will have to try and resolve in a way. They are trying to lower the age from 27 to 25, but I don't think that really is going to solve this issue on its own. And so You talk to Ukrainians and they say victory is what we want, and we're there, we're fighting, but you can see they're tired, they're exhausted. It's been 2 years already, and so we'll have to see how long, how much longer they'll be able to last.
I can't imagine the scale and severity of the fatigue and trauma that both the civilians and soldiers are feeling on the ground as the war drags on. Young-suk, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your eye-opening report with us. So we've been speaking with Im Young-suk.